No, I don't have anything against humans. But how is it that you go about defining good and evil? I'm only using what the gods gave me. How can that be so wrong?
Hello and welcome. I am Silvermont or Alex, and this is a new episode of Dark Souls Lore. Today we'll be covering another highly requested character from Dark Souls 2, one whom I glossed over in my initial playthrough, for he was a sorcerer, and the Silvermont is not typically a magic user. But now it's time to take a closer look at the Royal Sorcerer, sealed away at the very edge of Drangleic, in Lord Aldir's manor. Many of the friends will find locked up and in need of rescue, but this magician is neither our friend, nor in need of rescue. And that is because he locked himself away, afraid of what might happen, and the game rightly warns you multiple times not to release him. Heed not their advice and set him free, and you'll have a persistent foe tracking you from one side of Drangleic to the other, making every effort to destroy his new mark, with the multitude of powerful hexes at his disposal. It is of course Navlaan who we'll be talking about today, and we're going to go right ahead and skip what I would typically cover first, the character's name. With the possible exception of reversing his name and looking for anagrams, I don't see much relevance in his name, so let's jump right into the meat of the topic, and we'll start with a quick summary of Navlaan, who he is and what his role is in the game. We typically meet Navlaan late in the game, at the beginning of Aldir's Keep. Uniquely, he will offer us different dialogue depending on whether or not our character is hollow or human. And it quickly becomes apparent that we've got a Jekyll and Hyde-esque situation going on here. Speak to him in human form and we will meet the good side, who will ask us simply to leave him be. Whereas if you speak to him as a hollow, he'll offer us more explanations and give us some side quests. To hear him tell it, the evil side was born when the good side was experimenting and trying to bring new magics into the world, and instead he created that.
Long ago, this naive vessel of mine set about devising new spells. The fool dreamt of bringing new forms of magic into the world, but instead, he created me. Mostly by chance, but he did a fine job, I must say.
To make it clear which I'm talking about, I will refer to the good side as the Royal Sorcerer and the bad side as Navlaan. So, the Royal Sorcerer created Navlaan, and Navlaan realised that the Sorcerer sought strength, so he decided to demonstrate his by murdering others. It seems that when the Sorcerer slept, Navlaan could wrest control of the body and go on a rampage. When the Royal Sorcerer discovered this, he sealed the both of them away. After explaining this, Navlaan will set us the task of assassinating others. But why? That doesn't demonstrate his power, surely. So could it be more that he has a personal grudge against them? Well, let's look at the targets and consider. First up, we have Gilligan. Navlaan assures us that Gilligan won't be missed, and I get the impression that this is just a test kill, to gauge our character. After all, Gilligan is not the most well-meaning of fellows, by most accounts. Fair enough, he probably had it coming, right? But next up we have Kael. Navlaan professes disgust that Kael touched him, and that could well be reason enough for a sociopath such as Navlaan to want Kael dead. It should be noted that he does remark on Kael's map creation though. In all probability, that is so we can better reference just who Navlaan is talking about. Example, if Navlaan says, "Go and kill Kael," a player might go, "Kael? Who was that again?" But if he says, "Go and kill Kael, the cartographer, who was making the maps," then you get more recognition. But I suppose there is the possibility that Navlaan doesn't want Drangleic mapped. In my opinion though, he wants Kael dead simply because of a petty grudge. Once Kael and Gilligan are dead, or at least when Navlaan believes them dead, he will next request a strange target, Felkin. He gives no reason for this, and simply asks for Felkin's staff. So does he want the staff? Probably not, or at least not for his own usage. When Navlaan invades, he seems capable of casting without a catalyst, or so it seems to me. I'm not entirely sure on that point. And it's also worth noting that there is cut dialogue where he instead asks for a hex, of Falcon's creation, as proof that we slew him. He also warns us that Falcon will be formidable. So here's where it started to fall into place, for me. Gilligan was a test, Chaol was a nuisance, but Falcon, a hexer. And we know that Navlaan created hexes, along with Falcon and Galea, the father of hexing. Whether it's rivalry or jealousy, it seems to me that Navlaan does not want the hexer to live. But more on that shortly. First, let's talk about the final target, the Emerald Herald herself.
I want you to kill the girl in Majula known as the Muse. They say that she is the last firekeeper, but they say a lot of things. That she's a gentle shepherd, lighting the way for you cursed fools. Nonsense.
This is where things get a little speculation heavy. The Royal Sorcerer was creating magic, and the Dragon Acolytes of Aldia were also creating magic. Let us assume that the Royal Sorcerer was part of the Drangleic Royal Court, and sent to Aldia's Keep to assist in the creation of these new magics. Then, from that, if we also make the assumption that perhaps the Emerald Herald was created by Aldia or Vendrick in an attempt to subdue the curse, then that would mean Navlaan would likely know the truth concerning her existence. It would also mean that he knows she is, in a way, the Royal Sorcerer's creation, and what better way to torment his vessel than by having her killed? What do you think? And let's talk a little bit more about Navlaan, shall we? I am of the opinion that Navlaan is not the Royal Sorcerer's name, and here's why I believe that. The description of the Scraps of Life hex reads, an esoteric spell created by Navlaan, the infamous exiled sorcerer. The heretic Navlaan was executed along with his entire village, and the mere utterance of his name became a crime. Some say that it was because he sought to restore the banned art of resurrection. I believe that Navlaan was a hexer, seeking new means of immortality and resurrection through the art of hexing. And he found it, in a way. Despite being killed, I think his soul or consciousness remained in some form, and that the Royal Sorcerer unwittingly brought him forth, at which point the two became one. If you've played other fantasy games, might be it you know of Lishcraft, where a sorcerer will bind his existence to a catalyst. That is to say, he will put the essence of his being into, say, a crystal, and as long as that crystal survives, he cannot be truly killed. In a way, Navlaan resurrected himself into the Royal Sorcerer, in my opinion. There is, however, an item description that goes against this. Navlaan claims to have sealed himself away to prevent tragedy. But how could a sorcery truly possess a will of its own? Truth can be elusive, and the tales surrounding him are questionable. Only it is clear a strange power possesses this shield. Whilst that doesn't entirely discredit the theory, the fact that it says Navlaan claims to have sealed himself away would imply that the Royal Sorcerer's name is also Navlaan. However, if you look at the Chaos set, we then get further pieces to throw into the puzzle. Robe worn by a Chaos Sorcerer. He calls himself Navlaan now. Perhaps he used to go by another name, but he calls himself Navlaan now because the spirit of Navlaan dominates his soul and mind. I'm rather fond of this theory, but I'm not going to exclaim that it is definitely what happened. There is no empirical evidence either way. This is classic Dark Souls speculation. There are hints, both for and against, so ultimately it's up to you and what you believe. Navlaan is a mysterious character, and there are lots of little bits of info that tease and hint, but never confirm. But let's look at two more spells, Forbidden Sun and Unleash Magic. Forbidden Sun was created by Aldian rights, and Navlaan possesses it, and he will grant it to us if we do what he bids. I believe this reinforces the theory that the Royal Sorcerer was working with Aldia to create new spells, and I believe the spell that he created is also possibly the spell that resurrected Navlaan and allowed him to possess the Sorcerer, even though it is not a hex, but a sorcery. Boosts magic within the body beyond even your own limits, but at great cost to health. The terrible deeds carried out in Aldia led to the unintentional birth of several shadowy things, all of them eerily malformed. The unintentional birth seems to coincide nicely with Navlaan's lines of his creation being entirely by chance. And remember the description I mentioned earlier? Navlaan claims to have sealed himself away, etc., but how could a sorcery truly possess a will of its own? Unleash magic is a sorcery. It essentially calls Navlaan a living sorcery, which I believe, I think that reinforces the theory. Something else to consider, though, the unintentional birth of shadowy things, all of them eerily malformed. That, I believe, probably is mentioning those strange creatures you fight in Aldia's Keep. After all, it seems beyond merely making spells, they were trying to make... Well, what were they trying to make in Aldia's Keep? Who knows? Dragons, perhaps? Navlaan is enigmatic, and that's hardly rare amongst Dark Souls characters. All the same, the way he professes to be only using what the gods gave him, and seems to consider good and evil trifling affairs, that would certainly suggest to me that he is either a sociopath, or such an alien entity that he cannot comprehend them. And yet, at the same time, his line that mentions, "Perhaps this will sate my thirst," or something to that effect, seems a little bizarre, doesn't it? Why would he have such an urge to kill if that is what he is referring to? What has given him this thirst? But what do you think of Navlaan? I know this particular character has a storm of theories surrounding him, that he's Lord Aldia, that he's a finito, and so forth. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with in the comments, so please let me know what you think of Navlaan. Personally, I don't think he's a finito, but that's just my opinion. It is a fair assumption to make, what with his blue skin and the fact that his eyes are hidden and could well be red under those straps. I don't have any real evidence to argue against the point. It is just my personal belief that the Royal Sorcerer is blue because, well, Navlaan's inhabiting him. The unleashed magic has poisoned his body, perhaps. Who knows? Either way, thank you so much for watching, and let's hope Navlaan is grateful that he never thought to test his strength against the mightiest sorcerer the land has ever known. But until next time, you take care.
Now you're getting nervous, hmm?